I'm a woman, I identify as LGBTQ, and I'm an immigrant. And these are the identities that a lot of people would look at me and see. They're also some of the identities that happen to be a focus of corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI efforts. But on March 7th, 2019, I took on a new and my most important identity. I became a caregiver. On that day, my wife was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. And in the blink of an eye, our lives were turned completely upside down. Everything we had dreamed of, planned for, vanished in the blink of an eye. And we had to completely reimagine all aspects of our lives, including my job, a demanding career that I had spent 15 years building, and which we were now profoundly dependent upon as I became the sole breadwinner in our family. Woman, LGBTQ, immigrant, all important parts of who I am, but all became subsumed by my new identity, caregiver, in defining what I most needed when I came to work each day. I spend my days helping companies build their DEI programs, thinking about how to make their teams more diverse or their workplaces more inclusive. But my own experiences have shone a bright light on the shortcomings of our work. We spend about $8 billion in the US on DEI every year alone. But some are starting to ask the question of whether these programs are really delivering the value that we would expect. As many as 75% of people who we intend to help with these programs say, it doesn't benefit me. And some are even starting to ask the question of whether these efforts that were meant to bring our workforces together are actually having the opposite effect and pulling them apart. It's time for something new. As practitioners, we usually start by dividing our employees into demographic cohorts, and from there, we further slice and dice them into ever smaller subgroups as we try to make our programs more effective. But the reality is that while our demographic identities are incredibly important, they don't tell the whole story of who we are. When my wife got sick, the fact that I was LGBTQ really had nothing to do with whether or not I was going to be able to figure out how to balance work and her medical needs. We need to build a much more comprehensive understanding of our employees, their personal and life context, their prior experiences, what motivates them and doesn't motivate them, because these things have a really important role to play in shaping what they need to be successful. That all sounds great, but how do we actually do that for thousands of employees? Well, the answer can be found in a bit of a surprising place, in the science of the breakfast cereal aisle. When we walk into a supermarket, how we pick that specific box of cereal is actually driven by a pretty complicated set of mental trade-offs. Do I pick that one because it's on sale and high grocery prices are straining my wallet? Or do I grab that one because it was my childhood favorite and it's triggering waves of nostalgia? Researchers have developed sophisticated techniques to understand how we do that mental math and who's most likely to end up making the same choice as somebody else and why. And from there, companies can figure out what products to offer, what marketing messages to use, even where to make their products available, all so that they can be the right choice at the right time for as many customers as possible. So we asked ourselves the question, what if we turned those techniques inwards and thought of our employees as customers? We would spend a lot of time really trying to understand what motivates them to choose a job or to stay with a job. We'd go really deep to figure out which needs matter most to them and how good we are at helping them to solve them. And we would usher in a new generation of DEI programs, building upon our work to solve for bias and discrimination in the workplace, to also solve for what matters most. And in doing that, we would also find what connects us across demographic lines. We've been doing exactly that with really impressive results. My own experiences are a great example of what this can look like in real life. When we've historically thought about caregivers inside organizations, we've naturally zeroed in on women and the really important role that they play as moms. And because of that, we've innovated a host of programs, whether it be extended maternity leave, on-site childcare, or flexible work models. And those programs have been incredibly successful in helping to make work for more women. But when we open our field of vision, we actually see that there are caregivers much more broadly inside of our organizations. Parents across a range of genders and different family types, people who are caring for adults, whether it be spouses like me or perhaps elderly parents. And I would never in a million years equate the experience of being a mom with that of taking care of an elderly parent. But there's a lot of value to be had in recognizing what this community of caregivers share in common with one another. They are all trying to solve for the impossible, figuring out how to balance the demands of work with the important role that they're playing at home. And they would benefit greatly from inclusive strategies that recognize the needs that they share in common with one another. When my wife got sick, I was able to take advantage of a flexible work program designed to serve all caregivers, and that gave me real structural time to be able to attend to her medical needs. As a senior leader in my company, I changed my career path. At the time, I was leading a large facility responsible for hundreds of employees and involving a lot of day-to-day hands-on management. I swapped out of that role and I took on a new one that gave me more time and space to be able to work flexibly when and where it made sense. And it also allowed me to work with a smaller and more intimate team. But just as important were the things that weren't visible to an outsider. And my mentors recognized that I was still the same ambitious, passionate person that I'd always been, even if I couldn't show up in the same way. And so as I rebuilt my career, they helped me make sure that I still had the opportunity to grow, to build something, and to have an impact. They appreciated and recognized the contributions that I was having. And they never stopped asking the question, how can we help? That emotional support that cost the company nothing meant the world to me. And listen, we are still a business. And so as I've reduced my capacity, I've taken a pay cut and I have slowed down my climb up the corporate ladder. But the important thing is that I was able to make that choice and I was able to make it intentionally together with my company. And because of that, we've all continued to benefit from my ongoing contributions. But this type of thinking doesn't have to just apply to office workers. I've been really excited to partner with a Fortune 500 retail company. Retail employees come from a really diverse range of backgrounds and tend to represent a cross-section of our minority communities. They're also amongst the most economically vulnerable members of our workforce, plagued by job instability, the physical toll that their jobs have, and wage rates that haven't kept pace with inflation. For this particular company, they were dealing with chronic complaints about bad hours, either the wrong hours or not enough hours, and it was leading to lots of employees calling out from their shifts or quitting altogether. And then store managers were left scrambling, trying to figure out how they were going to staff their stores. On the surface, it looked like an operational problem, but we actually stepped back and talked to those employees. And what we heard was a host of really important needs that were going unmet, but were driving the choices that they were making. For the single mom, bad hours meant that she didn't have enough stability in her schedule from week to week in order to be able to plan for childcare. For the young man who'd stepped up to financially support a multi-generational household, bad hours meant that he didn't have enough predictability in terms of how many hours he'd get each week to be able to pay the bills. And for the first-generation college student, bad hours meant that she didn't have enough flexibility to balance the schedule that she had at school with the one that she had at her job. And so the company rewrote the software that store managers use to set the schedule. And they created the opportunity for employees to provide input into what type of schedule they most needed. They also created a shift marketplace, an Uber-like app where employees could go online and directly trade shifts with one another so that when their schedules changed, they had a solution. The result of these two solutions was that individual employees now were much better able to directly control and solve for their needs for predictability, stability, or flexibility, despite the fact that they were working within a massive operation with thousands of employees. They also felt far more respected and valued as members of the team. And for those store managers, they now had a stable workforce who they could count on to show up each day and deliver a great experience to customers. Communities defined by the role people play when they go home at the end of each day. Solutions that go well beyond the realm of HR into areas like IT. Companies focused on not just benefits and policies, but solving for what matters most to people at an emotional level. These aren't the things that we usually talk about when we talk about DEI, but they shine a really bright light on why it's so important for us to go beyond demographics and get to the heart of what really matters to employees. It all boils down to a common sense objective for DEI, to create workplaces where more different types of people can be successful. In other words, people come to work and they're happy because work works. They're motivated to give it their all, and they see a future for themselves at the company because work helps them solve for the things that are most important to them in their lives. And if we could do that, we would find the opportunity for more people with different backgrounds, identities, and life experiences to find stability in their jobs, to improve their own personal wellness, to get to that financial security, and to see better long-term prospects. And for companies, it would mean finally realizing the value from DEI that they've been longing for. Not just hitting a number, but really having the type of workplaces that are attractive to more different type of people. And as they do that, really improving engagement, productivity, and retention amongst their entire workforce, all things that have been highly correlated with improved business profits. We have the opportunity to make the next big leap forward in the promise of DEI, unleashing the potential of all in service of the individual, business, and the greater social good. Thank you.